Most people spend years trying to figure out what their partner wants. They read articles, they ask friends, they try harder, give more, do more, and somehow it still feels like something is missing. And here's the part nobody tells you. The harder you try to satisfy someone, the more you focus on the act of satisfying them, the further away you actually get from the thing that creates it. That's not a contradiction. That's psychology. Because what your partner is truly hungry for isn't effort. It isn't grand gestures. It isn't even love in the way most people understand that word. It's something quieter, something most people walk past every single day without noticing. And the small percentage of people who do understand this, not from a book, not from a course, but from a deep understanding of how human beings actually work, those people experience a kind of connection in their relationships that most people believe is either luck or magic. It's neither. What I want to share with you in this video is a framework grounded in emotional psychology that changes how you show up in your most important relationship. Not because it gives you better techniques, but because it changes what you understand about the person you're with. Stay with me, because there's one idea toward the end of this video that I believe most people have never heard articulated clearly. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Let me be clear about what this video is and what it isn't. This isn't a list of tips. It's not a script to memorize or a technique to perform. If you're looking for that kind of thing, you'll find it easily. The internet is full of it. What I want to offer instead is something that actually holds up over time, because techniques fade. Novelty wears off. But when you understand the emotional architecture of how another person experiences closeness, satisfaction, and desire, that knowledge doesn't expire. I've spent a long time studying attachment theory, relational psychology, and the patterns that separate couples who sustain genuine connection from those who don't. What I found consistently is this: the couples who thrive, not just survive, but genuinely thrive, have usually understood three things at a deep level that most people only understand on the surface. We're going to walk through all three, and I want to be direct with you. This isn't about me telling you what to do. You know your partner, you know your relationship. What I can do is offer a map. How you use it is entirely yours. Let's start where most people go wrong. Here's the pattern I see most often. Someone in a relationship, usually someone who genuinely cares, starts to notice a kind of distance, a dullness, a feeling that despite everything they're doing, their partner doesn't seem fully satisfied, fully present, fully lit up by them. And so they do what seems logical. They try more. They plan bigger dates. They say the right things. They become more attentive, more available, more generous. They ask, "How can I make you happy?" And they mean it sincerely. And sometimes, for a moment, it works. There's a flicker of warmth, a good evening, a brief reconnection, but it doesn't hold. And that's confusing because from a logical standpoint, you're doing everything right. So why does it feel like you're chasing something that keeps moving? Here's what's actually happening. When most people think about satisfying their partner, they're thinking about it as a transaction. I give something, they feel good. That's the model. And transactions work fine for simple exchanges. They don't work well for human beings who are emotionally complex and deeply sensitive, often in ways they can't even articulate themselves. Your partner isn't a machine that dispenses satisfaction when you put in the right inputs. They're a feeling person. Which means what matters isn't just what you do, it's how they feel inside the space you create together. And those are two completely different things. You can say all the right words and have your partner feel completely unseen. You can do all the right things and have your partner feel profoundly lonely, not because you're failing, but because you're operating from the wrong model. The other mistake, and this one is subtler, is performing connection instead of inhabiting it. There's a version of attentiveness that looks like presence but isn't. You're physically there, you're nodding, you're saying the right things, but internally you're monitoring, you're measuring, you're asking yourself, is this working? Are they satisfied? Am I doing this right? That monitoring, that internal performance review running in the background creates a kind of glass wall between you and your partner. They can't name it, but they feel it. Because human beings are extraordinarily sensitive to whether another person is actually here with them or just going through motions. And here's what's deeply ironic. The more anxious you are about whether you're satisfying your partner, the less satisfying you become to be around. That's not criticism. It's just how emotional systems work. So the question becomes, what does it actually look like to do this well? And that's where we go now. 3 psychological triggers. Trigger 1, felt safety before fulfillment. The first thing I want you to understand is this. Satisfaction, in any deep sense, cannot be felt by someone who doesn't feel safe. Now, when I say safe, I don't mean safe from physical harm. I mean emotionally safe, psychologically safe. The experience of being with someone where you don't have to manage yourself, where you don't have to edit your thoughts before you say them, where you don't have to worry that showing the wrong version of yourself will cost you something. Most people want to love their partner better. They want to be more expressive, more giving, more affectionate. And those are good impulses. But here's what the research consistently shows. A person who doesn't feel safe will not fully receive that love. They'll appreciate it on some level, but it won't penetrate deeply. It won't satisfy them in the way you're hoping it will. Because the human nervous system has a very specific order of operations. Safety comes first, always, before pleasure, before connection, before love in the felt sense of the word. When someone feels emotionally safe with you, something very specific happens in their body. Their system relaxes, their defenses lower, they stop performing, they stop managing, they become available to you, to themselves, to the experience of being fully here. And in that state, almost anything you do together becomes meaningful. A simple dinner, a quiet evening, a conversation about nothing in particular, but without that safety, the most elaborate effort in the world will feel like it's landing on closed doors. Let that breathe. So the question isn't, how do I do more? The question is, does my partner genuinely feel safe with me? Safe to be imperfect, safe to disagree, safe to have needs, safe to be tired or sad or uncertain without fearing your reaction. And this is where it gets nuanced, because safety isn't created by being agreeable all the time. It isn't created by never having conflict. Those things can actually undermine safety because they create the sense that only a curated version of reality is allowed in the relationship. Real emotional safety is created by consistency, by emotional predictability, by your partner knowing, not just believing, but knowing from experience that when they show you something real, you won't flinch, won't judge, won't punish them for it. That is the first foundational layer. And if you're honest with yourself, it's worth asking, in what moments do you make it unsafe for your partner to be fully themselves, not out of cruelty, just out of unconscious habit, out of your own reactions, your own needs, your own moments of withdrawal or criticism or dismissal? That's the real work of this first trigger. Not what you add to the relationship, but what you remove that makes space for your partner to exhale. Trigger 2, the discipline of genuine curiosity. Here's something most long-term couples do without realizing it. They stop being curious about each other, not because they stop caring, but because familiarity creates a kind of shorthand. You've heard the stories, you know the opinions, you can predict the reactions, and slowly, without anyone deciding to, a person you love starts to become a character in your internal narrative rather than a living, evolving human being in front of you. And the moment that happens, the moment you think you already know who your partner is, you stop seeing them. You see your idea of them, which is a subtle but profound difference. Now think about what this does to satisfaction. When someone feels seen, truly seen, not just noticed, something in them opens. Not because you did something clever, but because being genuinely known by another person is one of the deepest needs a human being has. Some psychologists argue it's the deepest. We all walk around carrying an inner world, thoughts, fears, dreams, contradictions that we never fully get to show anyone. Most of the time, we don't even get to show ourselves. And when you encounter someone who is genuinely curious about that inner world, not to fix it, not to respond to it, but simply to understand it, it creates an experience of connection that almost nothing else can replicate. Your partner is not the same person they were 2 years ago, or even 6 months ago. People are constantly shifting, evolving, quietly updating their beliefs, their fears, their desires. The question is, are you still paying attention? Genuine curiosity in a relationship looks like this. It's not asking how was your day and half listening to the answer. It's catching something your partner says, something small, something they maybe said in passing, and pausing, and actually asking about it. Not because you're supposed to, but because you actually want to understand. It's noticing when their mood is slightly different and being curious about what's happening inside them without immediately trying to fix it or reframe it or make it about the relationship. It's sitting with the fact that the person you love is more complex than your current understanding of them and being genuinely interested in that complexity. Here's a practical entry point. The next time your partner shares something with you, an opinion, a feeling, a small detail about their day, resist the immediate impulse to respond with your own experience or your own perspective. Just stay there with what they said. Ask one more question. Go one layer deeper. Not as a technique, but as a genuine act of interest in who they are. The effect of this over time is remarkable because your partner will feel something they maybe haven't felt in a long time in the relationship, the experience of being in conversation with someone who is actually here, not waiting to speak, not running their own commentary, but genuinely, quietly, completely interested in them. That kind of presence is deeply satisfying. And it's rare enough that when someone experiences it, they don't easily forget it. This third trigger is the hardest one to explain. Not because it's complicated, it's actually very simple, but because it cuts against something that most well-meaning people in relationships believe deeply. And the belief is this, that your partner's satisfaction is your responsibility. Now, before you push back on that, I want to be careful here, because there's a version of that belief that's true and healthy. Of course you care about your partner's well-being. Of course you want them to feel good. Of course you're invested in their happiness. That's not what I'm questioning. What I'm talking about is the anxious version of that belief, the version that makes you constantly monitor, constantly adjust, constantly manage yourself in response to your partner's emotional state. The version where your own internal stability is held hostage by whether or not your partner seems satisfied. Here's what that creates. When your sense of okayness depends on your partner's emotional state, you become, without intending to, emotionally dependent on them in a way that actually destabilizes the relationship. Because now they're carrying a weight they didn't agree to carry, the weight of being responsible for your equilibrium. And people can feel that weight. They feel it as a kind of invisible pressure, a subtle sense that they need to perform happiness in order to keep you regulated, that their authentic emotional state might upset you, so they'd better manage it before it gets out. It creates the very distance it's trying to prevent. What's the alternative? The alternative is what I'd call grounded presence. It's the capacity to be fully, warmly, genuinely with your partner, caring about them, curious about them, available to them without your own sense of self depending on their response. It's the difference between a person who gives freely and a person who gives in order to receive a specific reaction. Your partner can feel that difference, not consciously necessarily, but in their body, in how relaxed they feel around you, in how safe they feel being real. A person who is grounded in themselves, who doesn't need you to be happy in order for them to be okay, is paradoxically far more satisfying to be with than someone who is constantly, desperately trying to make you feel good. Because when you're with someone like that, you're free. You're free to have a bad day without worrying about managing them. You're free to have needs without fearing you'll be too much. You're free to be complicated, unresolved, still figuring it out. And here is the deepest truth I can offer in this video. Your capacity to satisfy your partner is almost entirely a function of your own internal state. Not your techniques, not your words, not your effort. Your presence, your groundedness, your ability to show up as someone who is solid inside, not because life is perfect, but because you have a stable relationship with yourself. That is what creates the conditions for genuine satisfaction. That is what makes everything else work. The safety, the curiosity, the connection, they all flow more easily from a person who is at home in themselves. This is why all the effort in the world sometimes doesn't move anything. Because effort applied from a place of inner anxiety often just transmits more anxiety. But small, quiet acts of presence offered from a place of genuine calm and security, those go very, very deep. So what does this actually look like in a real relationship on a normal Tuesday? The first thing I want to say is small shifts matter more than large ones. You don't need a grand reimagining of your relationship. You need a slight reorientation of how you show up in the moments that already exist. When your partner is talking and you notice your mind drifting to what you're going to say next, come back, not forcefully, just gently. Redirect your attention to what they're actually saying. What's underneath the words? What are they really expressing? When there's tension between you, and there will be, that's not a sign of failure. Resist the impulse to immediately defend yourself or explain yourself or resolve it as fast as possible. That speed is often anxiety in disguise. Instead, slow down, get curious about their experience before you explain yours. Not as a tactic, but because their experience is genuinely worth understanding first. When you feel that pull to do something, fix something, prove something, pause, ask yourself, what does this person actually need from me right now? Is it action or is it just presence? Just someone to witness what they're going through without needing to change it. Often, more often than most people expect, the answer is the second one. And here's something I want to be direct about. None of this works if it's performed. Your partner will feel a person who is genuinely curious, genuinely present, genuinely grounded. They will also feel a person who is trying to appear curious, appear present, appear grounded. The work ultimately is internal. It's the quiet, ongoing practice of knowing yourself well enough that you can be with someone else without losing yourself in the process. That's not a one-time insight, it's a discipline. One that builds over time and one that pays its returns quietly in a relationship that feels more and more like a place where both of you can actually breathe. If something in this video landed for you, if one of these ideas shifted something in how you're thinking about your relationship, I want to offer you a natural next step. Not a product, not a program, just a practice. For the next 7 days, try this one thing. Once a day, in a conversation with your partner, catch yourself about to respond and don't. Not yet. Ask one more question instead. Stay in their world for a moment longer than feels comfortable. Just listen and be genuinely interested in what you're hearing. That's it. No performance, no agenda. Just one more question. One more moment of being actually fully, quietly here. If you want to go deeper, if you want to understand more about how emotional safety, attachment, and presence shape the quality of our relationships, I've put some thinking in the description below. No strings attached, just ideas that might be useful. And if this kind of conversation is what you're looking for more of, honest, psychologically grounded thinking about relationships and human connection, then subscribing makes sense. I put out content like this regularly, and I try to make sure every video earns your time. I want to close with something simple. The deepest form of satisfaction in a relationship isn't created by what you do for someone. It's created by who you are with someone, by the quality of attention you bring, by the safety you create, by the stability you offer, not because everything is perfect, but because you've done enough work on yourself to be genuinely present, even when things are imperfect. Your partner doesn't need you to be flawless. They need you to be here, here with your full attention, here with your genuine curiosity, here with a steadiness inside yourself that makes it safe for them to show you who they actually are. That is the most satisfying thing one human being can offer another. Not perfection, not performance, just presence. Real, grounded, unguarded presence. If you're still watching, I genuinely like to know what part of this conversation meant the most to you. Drop it in the comments. I read them, and those conversations, those quiet moments of someone sharing something real, those are the reason I make these videos. Take care of yourself and take care of the person you're with.